The great hall of the Galactic Council was silent. Thousands of representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in their floating seats, all eyes fixed on the small figure standing at the center of the chamber. Ambassador Vel was not an impressive creature. He was short, covered in pale blue skin, and his forearms shook as he held his data tablet. But his voice carried fear that made even the oldest council members lean forward. "I have seen them," Vel said, his voice echoing through the massive room. "I have watched them for 10 cycles, and I am here to give you a warning that you must not ignore." The chamber remained quiet. Vel was known as a careful observer. His species, had survived for millions of years by watching and learning. They did not speak unless they had something important to say. "There is a world at the edge of the spiral arm," Vel continued. "A small blue planet called Earth. The creatures who live there call themselves humans. They are young. They have only just begun to reach into space. Their ships are slow. Their weapons are weak. By every measure we use, they are primitive." A few members of the council made sounds of amusement. The Galactic Council had seen many primitive species. Most of them never made it past their own star system. They destroyed themselves with war or pollution or simply failed to advance. It was the natural way of things. "But I must warn you," Vel said, and his voice grew stronger. "Do not measure humans by their technology. Do not judge them by their age. I have studied over 2,000 species in my lifetime. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched them conquer 100 worlds. I have seen them build their great stations, but I have never seen anything like humans." High Commander shifted in his seat. He was a massive creature, nearly 3 times the height of Vel, with thick gray armor covering his body. The Empire controlled more space than any other power in the galaxy. Did not like wasting his time on stories about primitive species. "Get to the point," Ambassador said. His voice was deep and cold. "We have important matters to discuss." Vel turned to face the High Commander directly. This surprised many in the chamber. Few creatures had the courage to meet a warrior's eyes. "My point, High Commander, is simple. Leave the humans alone. Do not contact them. Do not trade with them. And whatever you do, do not attack them." Laughter broke out across the chamber. Even some of the more serious representatives could not hide their amusement. Himself let out a long, rumbling sound that passed for a smile. "You want us to fear a species that cannot even travel faster than light?" asked. "Their ships take years to cross their own star system. Their weapons could not scratch the paint on my smallest patrol vessel. Why should the mighty Empire fear such creatures?" Vel did not back down, because they do not know how to stop. The laughter died. Something in Vel's voice made the chamber grow serious again. "I have watched them," Vel said. "I placed observation stations around their world 50 cycles ago. I have seen their history. They have fought wars that killed millions of their own kind, not for resources, not for survival, for ideas, for beliefs, for pride. They have weapons that could destroy their entire planet, and they have come close to using them more than once." "Then they are savages," said. "Savages destroy themselves. It is their nature." "No," Vel replied. "That is what makes them dangerous. They came to the edge of destruction and they stepped back. They looked into the darkness and chose to survive. But they did not become peaceful. They did not become weak. They simply learned to direct their fire outward instead of inward." Vel pressed a button on his tablet, and a holographic image appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a small human standing on a gray surface, planting a piece of colored fabric into the ground. "This image is from 50 cycles ago," Vel explained. "Humans had only just discovered how to leave their planet's surface. Their ships were made of thin metal. They had no shields, no artificial gravity, no way to protect themselves from the emptiness of space. Their own bodies were not designed for such travel. It caused them great pain and danger." "Then why did they go?" a council member asked. "Because another group of humans went first," Vel said. "A different nation on their world sent an object into space, and the humans in this image could not accept being second. So they built ships out of metal and hope, strapped themselves to controlled explosions, and flew to their moon. Many of them died in the attempt. They did not stop. The chamber was quiet again. "This is what I mean when I say they do not know how to stop," Vel continued. "When humans face a challenge, they do not ask if they can overcome it. They ask only how many of them will die trying, and then they try anyway." He changed the image. Now it showed humans climbing a massive mountain, their bodies wrapped in thick clothing, ice hanging from their faces. They climb mountains that will kill them. They dive into ocean depths that will crush them. They run distances that their bodies cannot handle, and when their bodies fail, they force themselves to keep moving. I have seen a human run on a broken leg. I have seen a human fight with wounds that would kill any warrior. They do not surrender. They do not accept limits. High Commander stood up from his seat. His massive form cast a shadow over half the chamber. "Enough," he said. "I have heard enough of this foolishness. They have conquered species far more impressive than these humans. We have fought enemies with superior technology, superior numbers, superior everything. And we have won. Always." "You have never fought humans," Vel said quietly. "And we may never need to," replied. "But if we do, they will fall like all the others. This council has wasted enough time on your fears, Ambassador. I call for a vote to dismiss this warning and move on to real business." The vote was quick. The council members pressed their buttons, and the result appeared above the chamber. The warning was dismissed. Only 7 representatives voted to take Vel's words seriously. Vel gathered his tablet and began to walk toward the exit. But before he left, he turned back one final time. "I hope you are right, High Commander," he said. "I hope you never have to learn what humans are truly capable of, because when they come for you, and they will come, you will discover that all your strength means nothing against creatures who simply refuse to lose." The chamber doors closed behind him, and the Galactic Council moved on to other matters. They would not think about humans again for many years, but Vel's words would echo in their minds when the fires finally came. 20 cycles passed after Ambassador Vel's warning. The galaxy continued to turn. Empires rose and fell. Wars were fought and ended. And on a small blue planet at the edge of the spiral arm, humans kept reaching for the stars. High Commander sat in his war chamber aboard the Imperial Fortress, the largest ship ever built by the Empire. It was a vessel so massive that it had its own gravity. Smaller ships docked inside it like fish swimming into the mouth of a great beast. Had used this ship to conquer 11 worlds. He had never lost a battle. Today, his advisors had brought him news from the outer regions. News about humans. "They have built stations around their neighboring planets," the first advisor reported. "They have established colonies on 2 moons. Their ships are faster now. They have discovered the basic principles of faster-than-light travel." Nodded slowly. "How long until they can travel between stars?" "Perhaps 10 cycles, perhaps less. They advance quickly." The second advisor stepped forward. He was smaller than the first, with darker armor and nervous eyes. "High Commander, there is more. We intercepted their communications. They have detected our observation probes. They know we are watching them." "And what did they do?" asked. "They sent a message, not to us directly but to their own people. They told their world that aliens exist, that they are being watched. They told their people to prepare." Leaned forward in his massive chair. "Prepare for what?" "They did not say, but our observers report that their military production has increased by 300%. They are building warships, many warships." The war chamber fell silent. The advisors looked at each other with uncertainty. Building warships was not unusual for a species that had just discovered they were not alone in the universe. Many primitive species did the same. Most of them built a few patrol vessels and felt safe, but 300% was something else entirely. "They fear us," said finally. "This is good. Fear makes species weak. Fear makes them easy to control. High Commander, the second advisor said carefully, I must remind you of Ambassador Vell's warning. He said that humans do not respond to fear the way other species do. Stood up from his chair. He walked to the great window of his war chamber and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, on a planet he had never seen, a species was preparing for war with an enemy they had never met. He felt something he had not felt in many years. Interest. Tell me about their leaders, commanded. The first advisor activated a holographic display. Images of humans appeared in the air. This is President of the Eastern Coalition. She controls the largest military force on their planet. Our observers say she sleeps only 4 hours each night and spends the rest of her time in strategy meetings. The image changed to show a man with gray hair and tired eyes. This is General of the Western Alliance. He is their most respected military commander. He has won every war he has fought. He is old by human standards, but they say his mind is still sharp. And this, the advisor continued, showing a younger woman with a hard expression, is Admiral. She commands their space fleet. She was the first human to land on their second moon. She is known for taking risks that others consider impossible. Studied the images carefully. These humans looked so fragile. Their bodies were soft, they're short, their physical strength pathetic compared to a warrior. And yet something in their eyes troubled him. There was no fear there, only determination. The Council has already dismissed the warning about them, said, but I am curious. What would happen if we tested them? Nothing serious, a small show of force, just to see how they respond. His advisors exchanged worried glances. High Commander, is that wise? The Council decided to leave them alone. The Council decided to ignore them, corrected. That is not the same thing. I am not suggesting we invade their world. I simply want to know what we are dealing with. Send a scout fleet to their outer colonies. Destroy one of their mining stations. Kill no one if possible. Let us see if these humans are as dangerous as Vell believes, or if they are just another primitive species making noise in the darkness. The order was given. 3 warships, small by Imperial standards but still powerful enough to level a city, jumped into the human star system 1 cycle later. They emerged near a mining station orbiting a distant frozen world. There were humans aboard the station, 47 miners and their families, living at the edge of their civilization, pulling resources from the ice. The ships did not announce themselves. They simply opened fire. The mining station's shields held for exactly 12 seconds before failing. The structure broke apart, spilling air and debris into the cold vacuum of space. Emergency pods launched from the station, carrying survivors away from the destruction. The ships did not fire on the pods. They had their orders. This was a test, not a massacre. They watched as the tiny human vessels drifted away, heading toward the inner planets, carrying witnesses who would tell their people what had happened. The response came faster than anyone expected. Within hours, Admiral had assembled a fleet. It was not an impressive fleet by galactic standards. 12 ships, most of them converted cargo vessels with weapons bolted to their hulls. The largest was a military cruiser that the humans called the Soul, named after an ancient city on their world. It was barely a quarter of the size of the smallest ship. The commander, a warrior named, watched the human fleet approach with amusement. His sensors showed him everything about these primitive vessels. Their weapons were based on explosive projectiles and focused energy beams. Crude technology. His shields could handle their attacks without strain. His weapons could destroy their entire fleet in seconds. He opened a communication channel, curious to hear what these creatures would say. Admiral's face appeared on his screen. She was sitting in a command chair, surrounded by officers working at their stations. Her expression was calm, too calm for someone facing certain destruction. "Alien vessel," she said. "You have attacked a civilian installation and killed 17 of our people. You have 30 seconds to surrender your ships and prepare to be boarded." Laughed, he could not help it. The sound echoed through his bridge and his crew joined in. This tiny creature in her tiny ship was demanding that 3 warships surrender to her. "Human," he replied, "you do not understand your situation. Your weapons cannot harm us. Your ships are nothing. Turn around now and I will let you live. Continue forward and I will send your fleet back to you in pieces." Admiral did not flinch. 20 seconds. Stopped laughing. Something was wrong. She was not afraid. She was not desperate. She was counting down as if she actually expected him to surrender. "You are insane," he said. 10 seconds. Gave the order to charge weapons. His ships powered up their main batteries, targeting locks appearing on every human vessel. He would teach this species a lesson they would never forget. "Time's up," Admiral said, and then she did something that did not expect. She smiled. The Soul surged forward, engines burning at full power, heading directly toward the flagship. The other human ships followed, not in formation, but spreading out, each one targeting a different section of the formation. They were not trying to escape. They were attacking. Fired, his weapons tore through space, striking the human vessels with enough force to destroy warships 10 times their size. The shields on several human ships failed immediately. Hull breaches opened. Air vented into space, but the ships kept coming. "They should be dead," one of his officers said, voice filled with confusion. "We hit them with everything. They should be dead." But they were not dead. They were still coming, still firing, still fighting. And as watched the human fleet tear into his formation, he finally understood what Ambassador Vel had tried to tell the Council. Humans did not know how to stop. High Commander received the news in silence. His scout fleet had been destroyed. 3 warships, crewed by his best warriors, reduced to floating wreckage by a fleet of human vessels held together with hope and metal scraps. Commander had died when his own ship exploded around him, rammed by the Soul in a final desperate attack. The humans had lost 8 of their 12 ships. Over 200 of their people had died in the battle, but they had won. For the first time in 300 years, the Empire had lost a battle to a species they considered primitive. Stood before the holographic display in his war chamber, studying the images of the destroyed fleet. His advisors stood behind him, waiting for his response. None of them dared to speak first. "They rammed us," said finally. His voice was quiet, almost thoughtful. "They knew they could not win with their weapons alone, so they turned their ships into weapons. They crashed their own vessels into ours." "Yes, High Commander," one advisor confirmed. "The humans call it a suicide attack. It is considered an honorable death in many of their cultures." "Honorable," tested the word. "We have fought many species. We have conquered worlds with populations in the billions. Not once has an enemy deliberately destroyed themselves to hurt us. Not once." He turned away from the display and faced his advisors. "Prepare the invasion fleet. Full strength. We are going to Earth." The news spread through the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. The Empire had declared war on humanity. For most species, this would mean extinction. They did not take prisoners. They did not negotiate. They simply erased civilizations that stood against them and took their resources. Ambassador Vel heard the news from his quarters on the neutral station at the galaxy's edge. He sat alone in the darkness, listening to the reports coming in from 100 different sources. They were gathering their forces. 200 warships, 50 carriers filled with ground troops. The Imperial fortress itself was coming, bringing High Commander to personally oversee the destruction of humanity. Vel closed his eyes and thought about the humans he had watched for so long. He thought about their history, their struggles, their endless determination to survive against all odds. He did not know if they could win this war, but he knew they would fight. On Earth, the news arrived during the night. President was pulled from her bed by her senior advisors, who played her the intercepted communications. The alien fleet would arrive in 30 days. Earth had 1 month to prepare for the greatest battle in human history. She did not waste time on fear. Within hours, she had gathered the leaders of every major nation on the planet. Old conflicts were forgotten. Ancient enemies shook hands and pledged their forces to a common cause. Factories that had been idle for years roared back to life. Ships that had been considered experimental were rushed into production. Every human who could carry a weapon was called to serve. Admiral took command of the defense fleet. She had survived the first battle, though her ship had been crippled in the fighting. Now she worked without rest, organizing the growing armada of human vessels. They were still primitive compared to but there were more of them now. Many more. "We have 300 combat ships," her second-in-command reported. "Another 200 cargo vessels have been converted for military use. We also have 17,000 fighters. Small, single-pilot craft designed for close combat." "It won't be enough," another officer said. "They have shields that can stop anything we throw at them. Our weapons just aren't powerful enough." Admiral looked at the tactical display. She saw Earth floating in the center, surrounded by the positions of her fleet. She saw the empty space where they would arrive, and she saw something else, something that made her smile. "We don't need to be powerful," she said. "We need to be stubborn. They expect us to fight like them. Fleet against fleet, weapon against weapon. But that's not how humans fight. We survive. We adapt. We find another way." She began giving orders. The fleet would not meet them in open battle. Instead, they would use hit-and-run tactics, striking at the edges of the enemy formation and withdrawing before they could respond. The converted cargo ships would carry boarding parties, ready to land on enemy vessels and fight hand-to-hand. The fighters would swarm the larger ships, looking for weak points, exploiting any gap in the enemy's shields. "They will destroy many of us," Admiral admitted. "But every time they destroy one of our ships, we will take something from them. We will bleed them. We will slow them down. And when they finally reach Earth, they will find that we are not finished fighting." General took command of Earth's ground defenses. He was old now, his hair completely gray, his body tired from decades of war. But his mind was still sharp, and his people still trusted him with their lives. He divided the planet into defensive zones. Each continent, each nation, each city was given a role to play. Bunkers were dug deep into mountains. Weapons were positioned on rooftops and in basements. Hospitals prepared for casualties that would number in the millions. "We cannot stop them from landing," told his commanders. "Their ships are too powerful, but we can make every step they take on our soil cost them. Every street will be a battlefield. Every building will be a fortress. If they want Earth, they will have to take it 1 bloody meter at a time." The 30 days passed like a held breath. Humans across the planet worked and trained and waited. Some prayed to gods they had almost forgotten. Some spent their final days with family, holding children they might never see grow up. Some simply looked at the sky and wondered what the enemy would look like when they finally came. Captain stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the stars. He was young for a captain, only 29 cycles old by human counting. He had been a cargo pilot before the war, moving supplies between Earth and the outer colonies. Now he commanded a vessel with 40 crew members and enough weapons to level a small city. His second-in-command, Lieutenant, stood beside him. She was even younger than him, barely 25, but she had the steadiest hands of any pilot he had ever seen. In the coming battle, she would be the one flying the ship while he gave the orders. "Are you afraid?" she asked quietly. Considered the question. "Yes," he admitted. "I think only a fool wouldn't be afraid right now, but fear doesn't matter. Fear is just a feeling. What matters is what we do with it." "And what do we do with it?" "We use it. Fear keeps us sharp. Fear keeps us alive. When they arrive, they will expect us to run or surrender. They don't understand that fear is what makes us dangerous, because a scared human doesn't give up. A scared human fights harder." The sensors beeped. A new contact had appeared at the edge of the system, then another, then 100 more. The fleet was arriving, ship after ship dropping out of faster-than-light travel, filling the darkness with their terrible presence. High Commander stood on the bridge of the Imperial Fortress, looking at the blue planet that hung before him. Such a small world, such fragile creatures. He had brought 200 warships to destroy them. It was excessive, perhaps, but after what happened to his scout fleet, he was taking no chances. "Begin the attack," he ordered. The fleet moved forward, weapons charging, shields at full power. They expected the humans to retreat, to hide behind their planet to beg for mercy. Instead, 500 human ships rose to meet them. Fighters swarmed out from carriers like angry insects. Weapons fired across the void, filling space with light and destruction. The battle for Earth had begun. And somewhere in the chaos, Admiral smiled. They had come to conquer. They did not understand that they had walked into a trap, because humans were not fighting to win. They were fighting to survive. And there was nothing more dangerous in the universe than a human with nothing left to lose. The battle had raged for 3 days. Space around Earth was filled with wreckage, both human and. The darkness between worlds glowed with fire and debris, a graveyard of ships and hopes stretching for thousands of kilometers in every direction. The humans had lost nearly half their fleet, 200 ships gone, along with the crews who served on them. Tens of thousands of people, erased in moments of violence so intense that nothing remained but scattered atoms. Admiral had not slept since the battle began. Her eyes were red, her voice hoarse from giving orders, but she refused to rest while her people were still fighting. They had suffered as well. Though their technology was superior, they had never faced an enemy like this. Human pilots threw themselves at the enemy with a ferocity that shocked even the most experienced commanders. Ships that should have retreated instead charged forward, ramming into enemy hulls, detonating their own power cores to take enemies with them. High Commander watched the battle from his throne aboard the Imperial Fortress. For the first time in his long career, he felt something like doubt. He had conquered 100 worlds. He had destroyed civilizations older than humanity, but none of them had fought like this. "High Commander," one of his officers reported, "we have lost 17 ships. Our shields are holding, but the human fighters are finding gaps in our formations. They are creative." Creative. It was not a word they used often. They fought with discipline, with overwhelming force, with the certainty that their strength would always prevail. But humans did not fight with certainty. They fought with desperation, with improvisation, with ideas that no would ever consider. One human pilot had flown his damaged fighter directly into the engine of a destroyer, timing his ejection at the last possible moment. The destroyer's engine had exploded, crippling the ship. The pilot had been recovered by his own people, alive but badly injured. He had asked to be put in another fighter as soon as he woke up. Another group of humans had used mining equipment to cut through the armor of a transport ship. They had boarded the vessel with nothing but handheld weapons and basic body armor. The soldiers aboard had outnumbered them 3 to 1. The humans had won, taking the ship and turning its weapons against its own fleet. "They do not follow the rules of war," muttered. "They do not accept that they should lose." On the bridge of the captain received new orders from Admiral. He read them twice, certain that he had misunderstood, but the words did not change. "She wants us to board the Imperial Fortress," Lieutenant said, reading over his shoulder. "The flagship, the largest ship in their fleet." "Yes. That's suicide." Turned to face his crew. They were exhausted, afraid, pushed beyond any limits they had known before. But they were also still alive, still fighting, still refusing to give up. "Admiral believes that if we can take out their commander, the fleet will lose coordination. Without, they might retreat. It's our best chance to end this battle." "Captain," one of the crew members said, "the Imperial Fortress has shields that can stop anything we throw at it. How are we supposed to get aboard? Smiled. It was not a happy smile, but it was a determined one. We're not going to break through their shields. We're going to fly through them. He explained the plan. They would approach the Imperial fortress at full speed, pretending to be a suicide ram like so many other human ships. They would see them coming and adjust their shields to stop the impact. But at the last moment, they would change course, flying along the surface of the shield bubble until they found a gap. Every shield has openings, said, points where their weapons fire through. When they shoot at us, their shields have to drop for a fraction of a second. That's when we get in. And if we don't make it, asked, then we crash into them anyway and take as many with us as we can. There was not the only ship given this mission. 20 vessels, carrying boarding parties of the best soldiers Earth had to offer, moved toward the Imperial fortress. Leading the ground assault was Lieutenant, a young soldier who had never expected to fight aliens when he joined the military 5 years ago. Beside him was Sergeant, a woman who had grown up in the mountains and could outrun anyone in the army. Remember, told his team as they prepared to breach the enemy ship, soldiers are bigger than us, stronger than us. Their armor is better than ours, but they expect us to fight like them. They expect us to meet strength with strength. Don't do that, be fast, be unpredictable, hit them where they're not looking and disappear before they can respond. The breach was violent and sudden. They found its gap, a moment when they fired their main batteries and their shields flickered open, screamed the order and flew them through with impossible skill, scraping past the shield barrier with meters to spare. They crashed into the hull of the Imperial fortress, cutting through the outer armor like a knife. Emergency doors slammed shut throughout the ship. Alarms screamed. Soldiers rushed toward the breach point, weapons ready to destroy whatever had invaded their vessel. They found humans waiting for them. Led the charge. His weapon was smaller than the massive rifles they carried, but it was faster, lighter, easier to aim. He fired in short bursts, targeting the gaps in armor that his training had identified. Moved beside him, a blur of speed that they could not track. She was under their weapons before they could aim, her blade finding weak points that their own people had never thought to protect. The fighting was brutal. Humans died in those corridors, cut down by enemies twice their size. But more humans kept coming, pouring through the breach, spreading through the ship like a virus. They did not try to hold ground. They just kept moving, destroying everything they could reach, disrupting the command structure from within. On the bridge, High Commander received reports of the invasion with growing disbelief. Humans were aboard his ship, his flagship, the greatest vessel in the Empire, and they were winning. Seal the bridge, he ordered. Send all available troops to stop them. But there were no troops available. Humans had found the armory and destroyed it. Humans had found the engine room and were planting explosives. Humans had found the shield generators and were tearing them apart with their bare hands. Kicked open the door to the main corridor leading to the bridge. 3 warriors stood in his way, the largest enemies he had faced yet. Behind him, only 4 of his team remained. They were wounded, exhausted, nearly out of ammunition. "We can't win this," one of his soldiers said. Looked at the blocking his path. They were enormous, terrifying, armed with weapons that could cut him in half with a single shot. By every logical measure, he should retreat. He should find another way. He should accept that this mission had failed. Instead, he raised his weapon and charged. "Then we'll lose together," he shouted. His team followed him, 4 humans against 3 giants. The odds were impossible. The situation was hopeless. Any sensible species would have surrendered. But humans did not know how to surrender. The battle lasted less than a minute. When it was over, 2 of soldiers were dead. He himself had a wound across his chest that would have killed most creatures. But the warriors were down, and the path to the bridge was clear. Helped him stand. Her face was covered in blood, some of it hers, most of it not. "Can you walk?" "I can run if I have to," replied, and somehow, impossibly, he did. They reached the bridge just as the last of the guards fell. High Commander stood alone, surrounded by the bodies of his officers, facing a small group of wounded humans who had no right to be alive. "What are you?" he asked, his voice filled with something that might have been fear. Looked at him through eyes that should have closed long ago, held up by will alone. "We're human," he said, "and we don't know how to lose." Then he pressed the button that signaled the fleet, and the Imperial fortress began to die around them. The Imperial fortress burned in the darkness of space. Fires that should have been impossible without air spread through its corridors, fed by chemicals and fuel and the shattered remains of 1,000 systems. Escape pods launched in every direction, carrying survivors away from the dying ship. Among those survivors was High Commander. He had been forced onto a pod by his last remaining guard, pushed through the door even as he shouted orders that no one could hear anymore. Now he floated in the void, watching his flagship collapse in on itself, watching everything he had built burn. The remaining fleet was in chaos. With the Imperial fortress destroyed and their commander neutralized, they had no leadership, no coordination. Some ships continued to fight, driven by pride and rage. Others turned and fled, jumping to faster-than-light speed without waiting for orders. Admiral watched them go from the bridge of her temporary command ship. The Soul had been destroyed 2 days ago, but she had transferred to another vessel and kept fighting. Now, for the first time since the battle began, she allowed herself to sit down. "It's over," Lieutenant said softly. She had survived the boarding of the Imperial fortress, one of only 12 humans to make it off the flagship alive. She was covered in bandages, her left arm in a sling, but she was smiling. "We won." Shook her head. "We survived, that's not the same thing." She looked at the tactical display one final time. The numbers were terrible. Nearly 300 human ships destroyed. Over 40,000 people dead. Cities on Earth had been hit by weapons that broke through the orbital defenses. Millions of civilians had died in the bombardment. But Earth was still there. Humanity was still alive, and the Empire had suffered its first defeat in 300 years. The news spread through the galaxy like a shockwave. Species that had lived in terror of the for generations heard about the battle for Earth and could not believe it. A primitive species, barely capable of interstellar travel, had defeated the most powerful military force in the galaxy. It seemed impossible. It seemed like a story made up by dreamers. But it was true. On the neutral station at the edge of the galaxy, Ambassador Vel watched the reports with tears running down his face. He had warned the Council. He had told them what humans were capable of. They had not listened, and now the universe was different because of it. A message arrived on his personal channel. It was from President, leader of the Eastern Coalition, now effectively the representative of all humanity. Her face appeared on his screen, tired but triumphant. "Ambassador Vel," she said, "I understand you tried to warn the galaxy about us. I wanted to thank you." Vel bowed his head. "I only spoke the truth, President. I saw what your species could become and I tried to protect you. I failed." "You didn't fail," replied. "You gave us time. Your warning made the Council ignore us for 20 cycles. That gave us the chance to grow, to prepare, to become strong enough to survive this. Without you, they might have attacked us before we were ready." Vel had not thought of it that way. Perhaps his warning had made a difference after all, even if not the way he intended. "What will you do now?" he asked. President's expression grew hard. "They started this war, but we're going to finish it. They killed millions of our people. They tried to destroy our world. We can't let that stand. Other species need to know that attacking humanity has consequences." "You mean to strike back at them?" "We mean to make sure no one ever threatens our home again." 3 months later, the Galactic Council assembled in emergency session. The Great Hall was packed with representatives from every major power in the galaxy. Fear hung in the air like smoke. The Empire was gone. Not defeated, not conquered, gone. Human forces had swept through space like a wave, destroying military installations, capturing worlds, dismantling the empire piece by piece. They did not commit genocide as the would have done. They did not enslave populations or destroy civilizations, but they made certain that they would never threaten anyone again. High Commander had been captured alive. He was being held on a human prison ship, treated with a respect that his own empire had never shown to prisoners. Some humans had wanted to execute him. Admiral had argued against it, saying that killing a defeated enemy proved nothing. He would face justice, but not revenge. Ambassador Vel stood once again at the center of the council chamber. But this time, he was not alone. Beside him stood General, now the official representative of the United Human Nations. The old soldier looked out at the assembled species with calm, steady eyes. "I warned you," Vel said, his voice echoing through the silent hall. 20 cycles ago, I stood in this place and told you about humanity. I told you not to provoke them. I told you they were different from any species you had ever encountered. He paused, letting the words sink in. You dismissed my warning. You laughed. And now the greatest military power in the galaxy is gone, destroyed by the species you called primitive. One of the council members spoke up. Ambassador, we recognize our error. We are prepared to welcome humanity into the Galactic Council. They have proven themselves worthy of membership. Shook his head. We did not fight this war to join your council. We fought it to survive. And now that we have survived, we have our own plans for the future. What plans? Another representative asked nervously. We are going to explore, said. We are going to build. We are going to grow. Humanity will spread across this galaxy and we will do it our own way. We will trade with species who wish to trade. We will make friends with those who offer friendship. But we will not bow to any council and we will not ask permission to exist. The chamber fell silent again. However, continued, we are not like we do not seek to conquer or destroy. We simply want to live, to grow, to become the best version of ourselves. Any species that respects us will have nothing to fear from humanity. We remember who helped us in our time of need. We remember who stayed neutral. And we remember who wished us dead. He looked directly at the representatives who had voted to dismiss Vel's warning all those years ago. Some of them looked away, unable to meet his gaze. I hope, said, that the galaxy will learn from what happened here. I hope that in the future, when someone gives you a warning about a species, you will listen. Because the next time humanity is threatened, we will not stop at defending ourselves. We will make certain that the threat can never rise again. He turned and walked toward the exit, Ambassador Vel following close behind. As they reached the door, Vel paused and looked back at the council one final time. I told you that humans do not know their limits, he said. I was wrong. Humans know exactly what their limits are. They simply refuse to have any. The doors closed behind them and the Galactic Council was left in silence, contemplating a future that had changed forever. The Empire was gone, humanity was rising, and the universe would never be the same. On Earth, survivors gathered to mourn their dead and celebrate their survival. Captain stood on a hill overlooking the ocean, watching the sun set over a world that was still free. Lieutenant stood beside him, his wounds slowly healing, his heart still heavy with the memory of friends lost in battle. Do you think they'll leave us alone now? Asked. Considered the question. He thought about the council, about all the species out there in the vast darkness of space. I think they'll try, he said finally. I think they're afraid of us now, but fear doesn't last forever. Someday, someone else will decide that humans are just another primitive species to be conquered, and when that day comes, we'll show them the same thing we showed the. And what's that? Smiled, his eyes reflecting the last light of the dying sun. That humanity doesn't know how to quit. We don't know how to surrender. We don't know how to accept that something is impossible. and anyone who threatens our home will learn that lesson the hard way. Somewhere above them, hidden among the stars, human ships patrolled the borders of their territory. New ships were being built every day. New colonies were being planned. New generations were being born, children who would grow up knowing that they lived in a galaxy that had learned to respect their kind. The Galactic Council had dismissed the warning about humanity. They would never make that mistake again. Because humans were beyond limits, and now everyone knew it.